Good morning, my cafecito colleagues. Hello, Dr. Cornelia Lang. Good to see you. The Honorable Tara Lujan joining us on this Sabido Gigante with El Mero Mero Fred Nathan. Yes, good morning, Honorable. Good morning, Dr. Lang. All right, I better grab some more coffee real quick. Fred, you got your coffee filled up?
Yes, I'm all set.
All right, just making sure. We're going to get started in less than 60 seconds right now at 9:02 on this beautiful 23rd day of January here in the Tierra del Encanto, the land of enchantment, the 47th star on the beautiful flag of the United States of America. Welcome to Cafecito con Colon as we shine a spotlight on the great work of Think New Mexico and Mr. Fred Nathan. So stand by. I'm going to get some more cafe. Otherwise, it'd be Cafecito sin Colon. What a great day it's going to be. One of my heroes on today, Fred Nathan. This guy's one of the best thinkers we've got in New Mexico.
This is so good, Brian, that you're stroking my ego because your viewers don't know that I have 3 teenagers at home who are constantly reminding me of my imperfections. So it's wonderful to be with you this morning.
Well, it is great to have you with me here today on Cafecito con Colon on this Sabido Gigante. Now, Fred, I know that you're focused in everything that you do, and I doubt that you've seen too many episodes of Cafecito con Colon, but we're going to put up just a few links this morning. I call them links of the day. And then you and I will spend some time together. We'll spend about 45, 55 minutes together just talking about some of the work you've done, the journey you've been on, and the future that you see for New Mexico, which is always bright. Does that sound all right, Fred?
That sounds great, Brian.
All right. So welcome everybody on this Saturday Gigante, the big Sábado Gigante. Good morning, Dr. Joe McCaffrey. Great to see you. The Honorable Tara Lujan sends her regards to Fred Nathan and Alex P.
Wow.
I'm so glad you're here this morning. Thank you, Ivan Trujillo, for joining me on this beautiful Saturday morning. Let me just put a very few links in the chat because I want to maximize my opportunity to be with you and to visit with the incredible Fred Nathan, and you will see why I hold him in such high esteem after you hear just a little bit of his vision for New Mexico and the work he's done and the work he and his great team at Think New Mexico intend to do. So with that, let me just say that I will tell you that I remember my paths crossing with Larry King, and I thought he was incredible. He was funny. He was self-deprecating, and I enjoyed my interaction with him at one of the Democratic National Conventions years ago. But we have a link there. He passed away, and at the young age of, I think, 87 years old. The story broke this morning, the passing of Larry King, more than 6 decades in journalism and on the air. What an incredible career. And you can learn a little bit more about him there. So speaking of incredible careers, we have one of the best resumes the White House has ever seen walk into the front door on Inauguration Day, in my humble opinion. And there's a great story there from NPR about Joe Biden's lifetime of service and experience. And indeed, it has been an incredible journey. Let's see, I wanted to share just a couple more. Yeah, so if you didn't see it yesterday, Tara, I don't know if you saw this, but this Celia made a great meme with me, with Aleli, and with the ever-present, everywhere, #1 memed character in the world, the Honorable Senator Bernie Sanders. Aleli and I took this picture on Inauguration Day, and we were kind of dressed up because we wanted to dress up for the inauguration. We would have gone to the ball if it had all gone as planned. But we got dressed up here at Casa Colon. We had dinner, and the way we were seated, I think it was Rafael took the picture, our son took the picture, and there's a space between us because she's sitting on this side of the table and I'm sitting on this side. And it's a great picture of both of us smiling, very happy occasion, January 20th, 2021. Well, last night someone sent me a picture, and sure enough, that space was just perfectly situated to have Bernie join us. And if you are following my feed, you'll see that great picture of me and Bernie and Aleli on Inauguration Day. I had posted the best tweet ever. I guess I was one of the early adopters to the tweet uh, and the meme with Bernie sitting in the airport on our beloved leather and wooden handcrafted. Well, I think they're handcrafted. I don't know whether they are or not. I call them handcrafted. I think they're beautiful. A part of our history because I grew up with those benches. But Bernie sitting there all by himself, Senator Sanders sitting all by himself. That meme went, that meme went viral on my Twitter feed. I've never had like 150, 200 likes on any tweet that I've ever done. I get all excited when I have 5 likes. But unlike my Cafecito episodes that go viral, we got Danny Bernal Jr., the village councilor or the city councilor from Berlin, New Mexico. His video had like 1,000 views in one day. I guess I had a cool kid on. Fred Nathan's going to do the same thing. We're going to have a couple thousand people watch this great episode about the work that's going to be done in the Merry Roundhouse virtually during this 60-day session. They've got a very robust agenda, and Fred Nathan and his incredible team are going to advance it. So anyway, I digress, but there's the Bernie story. Check this out. Here's the story. If you don't know about the Smittens, you know what Smittens are? Hey, Fred, do you know what Smittens are?
I know that I've seen this meme with Bernie Sanders, and he's got these mittens on, and he's everywhere with them. But I didn't know they were called smittens.
Yeah, so they're called yeah. So the idea is that they're mittens and combined with a sweater, because they're called part mittens and part sweater because this lady a couple of years ago, who happens to be one of our phenomenal educators in America, gave them to Bernie as a gift, never thinking he'd wear them. And now he's worn them to a couple of high profile events and they went viral, but they're smittens because they were taken from part sweater and part mitten, and now they're smittens. And now we're all smitten with Bernie. The only thing we're more smitten with than Bernie's mittens or smittens is the incredible Amanda Gorman, who changed our lives forever with her incredible presentation. And I might add that if you didn't notice, she wore the beautiful colors of the Tierra del Encanto, the land of enchantment, the 47 star on the beautiful flag of the United States of America. She was in yellow and red. So that was awesome. We love Amanda Gorman, that incredible Harvard grad who says that she was just that skinny girl who, as it turns out, Fred, did you know this, that as a young child, I guess she had special needs. And so she's been on quite a journey to where she is today, and really a beautiful story. Check that out. Learn more about Amanda Gorman, learn more about her passion, first National Poet Laureate. People think that she was the first National Poet Laureate here 2021, but that's not true. She was actually the first National Junior Poet Laureate in, I think, 2017. So it was a couple of years back. She was chosen. She was like only our 5th inauguration poet laureate to speak, which I found fascinating because most of the inaugurations I paid attention to, there was John F. Kennedy had Robert Frost.
Yeah.
Who was a friend of one of your friends, Stuart Udall. That's one of our connections. Obviously, we've got, I always say the Kennedys are the Udalls of the East. Some say that the Udalls are the Kennedys of the West. I say the Kennedys are the Udalls of the East.
I like that.
But thank you, Fred. I made that myself. But I will say that it was always so cool to me anytime that I got to be in the presence of Stuart Udall. I couldn't help thinking this living legend hung out with Robert Frost. I mean, that's just phenomenal. So anyway, Robert Frost was the first poet to speak at an inauguration. And then we had a few others after that. President Clinton did it both of his. President Obama did it for both of his. And I think Ronald Reagan, there was one other that might have done it. maybe. I posted the story last week in my links, but there's just been a few, and this one rocked it. Obviously, Maya Angelou was a favorite, uh, uh, maybe second only to Robert Frost, but now I think Amanda Gorman. It's all about time and place, and we were in a time and place when we needed to hear those words from an incredible young Black woman. And just amazing. Amazing. Hey, Fred, I'm totally distracted this morning. You know, Saturdays are the quickest to get off track. It is 9:12, and so I'm not running behind yet, but I'm totally going down these rabbit holes that don't lend themselves to all these links that I had prepared. But let me just put up a couple more, and then I'm going straight away to you. Here is, as you know, I get all into people that are those who are able to embrace their different abilities. And we've talked a lot about over the last few hundred episodes of Cafecito con Colon about paraplegics and incredible acts that they've been able to accomplish. This one here climbed 820 feet up a Hong Kong skyscraper. Check that out. Pretty amazing. Be inspired. And this paraplegic athlete in a wheelchair climbed 820 feet. Now, just so you know, an average floor is 10 feet. So you're talking 82 stories up. Oh, here, I'm sorry, 89 stories at the Nina Tower in Hong Kong. On Saturday, residents watched paraplegic athlete Lai Chai Wai strap himself to his wheelchair and climb up one of the city's towering glass pane skyscrapers. Over more than 10 hours, Lai managed to pull himself up more than 250 meters, which in US language, that's about 820 feet, in an effort to raise money for spinal cord patients. Golly, beautiful. Be inspired, folks. Be inspired. Right? All right. Look, I got lots to talk about here, but let me just say the session's going to be amazing. The governor's talking all about recreational marijuana, fixing the budget, and creating jobs and all that. But we've got some fundamentals we're going to talk about today. We got some fundamentals that we're going to talk about today, and I want to give you an opportunity to learn about the work of a man who has had my respect now for a quarter century at least. His journey of impact started long before he knew me and long before I had the privilege of knowing him. But let me tell you about Fred Nathan, who founded Think New Mexico and is its executive director. He served as special counsel to the New Mexico Attorney General from 1991 to 1998, which is when I first met him, on his way out the door of his service with then Attorney General Tom Udall. So he served there with distinction, and in that capacity, he was the architect of several successful legislative initiatives, which is where he kind of cut his teeth on how do you take important public policy and not just write about it and put it on the shelf, not to mention that that's what a lot of think tanks do, but how do you take it from a discussion, a policy paper, and then implementation, as opposed to putting it on the bookshelf. And that's where he is so effective. He was in charge of the New Mexico's lawsuit against the tobacco industry, which resulted in a $1.25 billion settlement for the state of New Mexico. Folks, I said that correctly. You heard it correctly. $1.25 billion settlement for the state of New Mexico. Just so you have a sense of how big that number is, that is literally 15% of this upcoming annual budget for the state of New Mexico. 15%. Like, we got an $8 billion budget. If my math is correct, that's like 15% of our annual budget here in the state of New Mexico. And at the time, let me put a sharper point on that, or maybe a broader point on that, which is at the time, our state budget was about half of what it is today. So at that time, you're talking probably 25 to 30% of the annual budget of the state of New Mexico is what that tobacco settlement actually represented, right, Fred? Am I way off?
We have a lot of smokers in New Mexico, unfortunately, and that helped lift those numbers. And hopefully that money is being spent well to reduce that number of smokers going forward.
That's right. That's right. Would it be all right, Fred? I didn't ask you about this in advance. I love it's a little bit dated. You might say, but I think it's a beautiful 2 minute encapsulation of the journey of and the mission of Think New Mexico. May I play that 2 minute video from your landing page at Think New
Oh,
Mexico? Is that
sure,
right?
sure,
Is that cool?
absolutely. Thank you.
Do you think that's valuable? Is that a good encapsulation? Do you agree?
It's, it's comical around the office because we're policy wonks, we're not television stars. And I can't remember the context of why we even filmed it. And I haven't looked at it in a long time, so I'd be curious to watch it myself.
Well, all the more reason to do that today, right here on this Sabido Gigante Cafecito con Colon with Think New Mexico and the incredible Fred Nathan.
Think New Mexico is a results-oriented think tank serving New Mexicans, and we're a little bit. First is that we are results-oriented, and we don't just issue white papers and cross our collective fingers and hope something good happens. We go across the street and make the case with the governor and the legislature for our policy recommendations. The second way that we're different is that we don't have an ideological bent. We just believe in a state that's 49th or 50th in so many national rankings that the focus should be on developing long-term sustainable solutions rather than ideology. We actually spend most of our time doing research, and we want to know our issues better than anyone else, and that helps us when it comes time to make the case. To know the strengths and weaknesses and to navigate a course to get our ideas to the finish line, which is getting them signed into law. Ideally, we'd like to get our issues passed in a single year, and we got spoiled by full-day kindergarten, which got passed in the first year, although there was implementation that took place over 5 years. But the food tax took 3 years. The Strategic River Reserve took 2 years. We only work on one issue each year. And we apply a very simple two-part test. Is it broad enough to make a difference in the lives of people in New Mexico, but yet small enough to be politically achievable? Margaret Mead really said it best: never doubt that a small committed group can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And that's really our inspiration here at Think New Mexico.
I love it.
You can tell that a long time ago, just from looking at my hair today and looking at it in that movie. That must have been 15 years ago.
Well, I think it was. It was about the just a wonderful moment in time, but it was very early on, because you will notice, and the thing that made me laugh the most was that, Think New Mexico, we are results oriented. Indeed, you are, and we take one issue a year. Hell no, you don't. Like, you have become this incredible superstar. And if you are the issue that is in the crosshairs for change in Think New Mexico's scope, then forget about it. Change is on the way. You have really advanced the agenda and the conversation with creative, very palatable approaches to a bipartisan evaluation of issues that are critical to the state of New Mexico. Now, we can spend a lot of time going over past accomplishments, and I want to talk a little bit about that, but let me just talk about where we're headed this legislative session, because we just kicked off. Next week's going to be a big week. You're talking about ending predatory lending in New Mexico. You're talking about making financial literacy a high school graduation requirement. Look, let me just say that the Attorney General, Hector Balderas, and we've been beating this drum for decades. I can remember when Hector Balderas was a brand new legislator. You're talking nearly 20 years ago. And there were some great organizations that came to him, and he understood. Both of us had been in pretty dire financial circumstances on our journey. I'm a survivor from having my car repossessed when I was an undergraduate student. Practically, if there were credit scores back then, I would have had a 0. Let me just be clear about that. But have come back from the brink of that financial disaster 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I guess 30 years ago now, to where I am today, to Hector really understanding that, growing up in Wagon Mound and being a New Mexican and being at Highlands, financial literacy wasn't front and center for him. It was about survival. And once you go from surviving to thriving, if you don't have that financial literacy landscape laid out in front of you, you are going to take far longer to that point from surviving to thriving than if you'd had financial literacy education in high school. You've also talked about stopping the tax on delivered groceries. maximizing dollars to the classroom, which, look, we've always all agreed upon that. So I'm really interested to see how do we take that from being a cool thing to say to really an actual public policy that makes it happen. And then for me, everybody knows that follows me knows that I'm all about fair districting. We get a chance once every 10 years to get that right. And typically it's become incumbency protection program once a decade. And fairdistrictnm.org, check it out. I really want to get behind Senator TC Pino and Senator Moore's talk about bipartisan work to make sure that we do have fair districts in New Mexico, not gerrymandering that looks like the special shapes balloons at the Balloon Fiesta Park. But this other one here is just as important. And I think it's only been the last few years that people have been talking about it in a way that actually leads me to believe that we might get some of this. Capital outlay transparency. When I talked to Senator TC Pino a couple of years ago, and that guy who's brilliant, we don't agree on everything, but he's brilliant. He's a great thinker. He's obviously very bright. If he can be in the Senate as long as he's been in it and say, I can't really explain the capital outlay process to you. Like, are you joking me? One of our more senior senators can't explain the capital outlay process to me. Like, it is this hocus pocus. All of a sudden we have a budget kind of process with the capital projects that more senior senators can't really explain. And I can tell you that I've been honored because I was the beneficiary, right? To at the last minute during those closed door meetings to get the phone call from the senators saying, do you have enough money for your project? Because we're getting ready to close the deal right now. Right now. Now, I will tell you that it was a long time ago, Fred, because that project was really important to me. And it's part of my very proud journey of turning Pope Joy Hall around with Tom Takach, who was a visionary for Pope Joy. But we were doing the very first capital outlay project for Pope Joy Hall in many, many years. It was to take the earthquake seats that were in the Pope Joy Hall and actually put in a new set of seats in Pope Joy Hall. And we raised a bunch of money private. We got some from the legislature. We got it done. But all that to say, that's like 20 years ago, 15 years ago at least. And then we couldn't explain the capital outlay process. And today we can't explain the capital outlay process. So let's get capital outlay transparency to be a thing of the future in New Mexico, and not the distant future, but the near future. So with that, let me just say, when it comes to public policy, you can't have a better think tank than Think New Mexico. He's got a great team. He's a great leader. He's been doing it for more than 2 decades, making a difference in New Mexico, lifting up New Mexico and saying, yes, we can do better. Yes, we don't have to accept the status quo and be 49th and 50th on each and every one of those lists. But if we're going to change, that means the policy's got to move with us. And you are so good at doing that. Fred Nathan, thank you for joining me on Cafecito con Colon on this beautiful Sábado Gigante.
Thank you for having me on. And, you know, if I knew you were going to say all those nice things about me, I would have required my 3 teenagers to be watching this morning, but they're still sleeping.
I understand. Mine is too. He's 23. It doesn't change much. I'm just pleased to have him under my roof. So as long as he stays, he can do whatever he wants while he's here.
That's a good attitude.
Hey, Fred, tell us a little bit about, you know, I know the origin of Think New Mexico, but I think it's a beautiful story. We've got about 35 minutes to kind of hit a little bit of, and thank you for your patience. I actually went on a tear this morning, longer than I normally do. I think it's because I'm nervous. People that know me know that I have held Fred on this pedestal for such a long time. And part of it is the context in which I met him. And it was very early on for Think New Mexico. It was with people like Stuart Udall. It was with people like Tom Udall. It was with an incredible group of bipartisan living legends, really, that said, we can do better, and we believe Fred can help us facilitate an important conversation. And so you've always kind of been larger than life, but on the other hand, every time I've reached out to you for guidance and for information, you've been incredibly receptive and responsive. So I'm sorry I'm a little nervous and even more talkative than normal, but I really am. This is almost, you know, we've almost got 300 episodes under our belt, and I still get a little nervous with a few of my guests, and I think I am a little nervous with you, Fred. But tell us a little bit about the beginnings, the original board, you know, Stuart Udall, and so many giants. If I remember right, was Fred Harris part of it too back then?
LaDonna Harris.
LaDonna was. I'm sorry,
And
LaDonna.
LaDonna is still on the board today, and what a living legend she is.
Talk about those origins, talk about those early days, and then let's spend the last 30 minutes talking about the agenda going forward.
Sure. So I was working for Tom Udall, and I carried his legislative agenda every year to the legislature for 8 years. And it was really an education for me. I'd been a political science major in college. And when he asked me to do this job, I'd never worked the legislature, but I thought, well, I'm a political science major. I can figure this out. But, you know, come to find out, it's not anything like what you read in your textbooks, trying to pass a bill. And Tom was always very ambitious every year, and we always had a very ambitious agenda. And over the, you know, that period of time, I learned a lot. And about 6 years into it, Tom did a huge campaign on reforming our DWI laws. And we got through a gigantic package in 1991, which brought down the fatality rate by about 20%. And it really taught me, Brian, that changing laws can really change lives. And during that same 2-year period where it came down 20% in New Mexico, it came down about 1% nationally. So I saw how laws could make a difference. The one thing we didn't get through, and you might remember this, was closing drive-up liquor windows. And it took 5 years to get that bill through. And in the 4th year, every year we got it, you know, like the first year, it was so toxic, we couldn't even get the bill introduced. The next year, we got it out of one committee, couldn't get it to the floor. 3rd year, got it to the floor, couldn't get it over to the other chamber. Anyway, we had a wonderful sponsor who was a Democrat. And one year, in the 4th or 5th year, we got it up to Governor Gary Johnson, who vetoed it. And I brought it back to my Democratic sponsor, and he was thrilled. And I said, Senator, maybe I misspoke. I meant to tell you that the governor vetoed your bill. And he said, I heard you correctly, Freddie. Don't you understand? And I said, apparently not. And he said, well, and he made a motion like this. He said, Johnson's up for re-election next year. And, you know, Tom is a Democrat. And he said, you know, we'll beat him and then we'll pass it. And, you know, I was so young then. I said, well, I thought we were in this to save lives. And he's like, well, we can save lives, but we'll just do that next year. So I remember walking back to the AG's office, which was in the Baton building, to tell Tom that the crown jewel of his legislative agenda was dead and his sponsor couldn't be happier. And that's when I began thinking, you know, we need a bipartisan organization that will drain the politics out of these issues so we can have sort of a political free zone where we can pass important legislation that will improve the lives of everyone. So naturally, the first person I went to was Stuart Udall, Tom's father, who was a good friend. And I wasn't really sure this was a good idea, Brian. I didn't know that I could pull this off or anything. And Stuart would always come down to the office to kibitz with Tom, and sometimes he'd come by and see me. And, you know, it was hilarious. You'll enjoy this because he and Tom had a running, very friendly argument about campaigns. And Stuart always believed that Tom spent too much time raising money. And he'd come in and he'd lecture Tom about the television doesn't matter because, you know, he had first run for office in 1955 in Arizona on maybe $10,000 to get elected to Congress, which he thought was a lot of money back then. So they would always have this funny argument, and then he'd come and see me. And so this one time I said, Stuart, I have this idea. I really want to run it by you. So I explained this idea of a bipartisan think tank that would drain the politics out of these issues. And I must have, like you, I was very nervous and I was thinking, you know, what's he going to think of this? And he didn't say a thing. And at the end of my little presentation, he said, sounds like a good idea, Freddie. If you need a board chair, sign me up. And that was the greatest thing he could have said to me. And of course, he became our first board chair, and he was terrific at it. And he gave me, frankly, credibility. And and it was a good bunch of people. It was Paul Bardicke, former Democratic Attorney General of New Mexico, whose campaign, he would have been a governor, but he made the mistake of making me his campaign manager in 1990. So we had Paul, we had
There were a couple
Stuart.
other complicating issues there. Let's just be clear, but go ahead.
Yeah, LaDonna Harris, who is a great friend and continues today on the board. Like Paul, they've both been on the board for over 2 decades.
Hey, did you know that LaDonna has been one of my honorary co-chairs of my campaign? I've always had 3 honorary co-chairs of my campaigns. She has been honorary co-chair of my campaign ever since I ran for the original public office I sought, which was for lieutenant governor back in 2010. LaDonna's an incredible woman.
I'm going to send you a video, unless you already have it, called Indian 101.
I have it.
Oh, you have it?
I actually have a t-shirt that I got as a result of donating, I think, to help fund the production of or the distribution of that video.
You know, Brian, just listening to you, you are such an amazing philanthropist. And to know that you got your car repossessed 30 years ago, and I'm just worried. I want to talk to your wife, because I hope she's in charge of the finances, because I'm guessing that left to your own devices, you would give away your entire salary as auditor to all these good causes that you're involved with, whether it's Think New Mexico, where you're very generous, to LaDonna Harris. And I just know from observing you over the years, you're involved in every good cause. And you just mentioned Pope Joy Hall, which was one of your causes I didn't even know about.
That's funny, Fitz. She's yelling in the other room. He already has given it all away. But it is funny though. I will tell you just quickly, as we better pivot to the agenda here. But Fred, you just make me so happy. I will just say that you know, Lely and I have been together 25 years, and she had impeccable credit when I met her, and then she married me, and that of course took a hit as a result. But she was in charge of the money for like the first 2 months. And back then, folks, you used to be able to do, it was technically illegal, but you could do it very easily. We're talking in the late 90s, early or mid 90s. You could do what we called, and the industry called, kite checks. And so that meant that you could write checks, and even though the money wasn't in the account, you could kind of time it out, and they'd say you'd kite the check, kite like fly a kite, but you'd kite it out and figure out when the check was going to be sent back to the demand deposit account for transfer, and you could say, okay, well, I got a 3 to 5 day window there. Anyway, that was the life I was living and bouncing, and the bank would call and say, Brian, the check's trying to clear this morning, because I had a good relationship with all the tellers, because I'm kind of a nice guy. I was just completely broke. And they'd call and say, if you can get in by 10 o'clock, we can post the deposit and we'll clear the check instead of sending it back. Anyway, my wife had the checkbook for the first 60 days, and I'll never forget, she came to me and she said, look, she said, until the day comes that we have more money than we know what to do with, I can't deal with the stress related to this whole kiting checks and not having enough money to pay. She says, I can't deal with it. And so here you go. She turned it all over to me. Now I will just say that I am the least well-capitalized philanthropist I know. I never write a check with a comma in it, but they all go out to these great organizations with a full heart. And I always say that for the last 25 years, I've always had more than enough. I've got a roof over my head. I've got food on the table, and my family's incredibly enriched and blessed. And anything that I can be remembered for being giving and generous in the community, I feel fortunate. So here we go again, Fred. Let's pivot over. You've taken me down another rabbit hole. Let's pivot over to and use that as the beginning point for this conversation about predatory lending, and a conversation about making financial literacy a high school graduation requirement. Because yes, I have used back in the day predatory lenders, but for me, back 35 years ago, it wasn't as prominent as it is today with title loans and those types of loans. What it was I had a couple very small pieces of jewelry that were from my family, and I gave them to the pawn shop. And I went to the pawn shop, and I paid, and I paid, and I paid, and I paid, always losing sleep about whether or not I was going to be a day late and lose my father's wedding band, which is what I was pawning at the time. And those of you that know me know that I buried my father when I was a teenager. He was 49 years old and passed from muscular dystrophy. And to this day, I still have his ring, thankfully. But anyway, let me just say that these two issues for me are front and center: ending predatory lending, or at least discussing about what is predatory lending and what is appropriate consumer option when it comes to being a borrower. Let's talk about that, Fred. Can we get me to be quiet and now at 9:35 to get on the agenda for Think New Mexico?
Yeah. So predatory lending for your viewers is, we define it as any lending with triple digit interest rates. And in New Mexico, for small loans, the cap on interest rates right now is 175%. And just to put that in context, that means if you took out a $400 loan at 175% for a year, you'd have to pay back $1,100, $400 of principal and $700 of interest. That's actually a fairly typical predatory loan in New Mexico right now. And generally what happens is at the end of the year, people who take out the loan can't pay it back. So the industry is very clever and says, well, let's roll that into another loan. About 80% of these loans are rolled over. And what they create is, in essence, a debt trap where people never get out of it. We gave the example in this report. And by the way, if anybody wants this report, just contact our office over the internet or call us and just say Brian, and you get it for free. It's a $10 value, as they say on television.
Right. We love bringing value, baby.
But we will send it to you free of charge. And we tell the story of a woman, a Navajo woman, Mary Shea. And Mary lives with her sister on the Navajo reservation in a 2-room house without electricity. And she needed firewood to keep the house warm. So she got a ride into Gallup, took out one of these loans, and she's still paying it off. She told us that she was frightened that she'd be arrested because what happened was she took the loan out, couldn't make the payments, and then they started calling her. And she has 2 jobs, one at a thrift store and one at a hotel, calling her at both places. And fairly typical. The good news here, Brian, and you didn't have this 30 years ago, but a shout out to the people at the Guadalupe Credit Union. They take people who are in these debt traps and help them get out of it with their own loan product that stretches it out over a long period of time so they can get off this treadmill. They have to take a financial literacy course. But in the meantime, because the Guadalupe Credit Union isn't everywhere in New Mexico, we think a better route to go is to do what many, many states have done, which is to cap the interest rates on small loans at a much lower level, at 36%. The federal government did this many years ago with the federal, you may be aware of this, the military lending law. And what they discovered, this is back in the George Bush years, some people in Congress noticed that it had become a national security issue because a lot of service members were in terrible debt, or their family members were. And so Congress passed a law and said, as pertaining to federal military service members or their families, we're going to cap the rate at 36%. And a lot of states have now mimicked that. New Mexico has, depending on how you measure it, either the first or the third highest rate in the country. And just to give you, I know you're a numbers guy because you're the state auditor, $660 million last year were written in these loans. And just to put that in perspective, that's just an enormous number. That's about a little less than 10% of our overall state budget. And so we've got lots of low-income New Mexicans. And the other thing to understand is we had our interns this year look up the 561 storefront loan companies in New Mexico, just to find out how many of them were incorporated in New Mexico and how many were out of state. And it's 85% are out of state. So that means essentially what we're doing is we're in effect taxing low-income New Mexicans and exporting that money out of New Mexico to these out-of-state shareholders. And of course, by bringing down the rates, that money, and you probably remember this, Brian, because you were there as you so movingly talked about your father's wedding band. If we can keep that money here in New Mexico, low-income people spend nearly all of their discretionary income. I'd rather have them spending that in New Mexico in local restaurants or local stores than exporting it out to these really sophisticated, and many of these companies are Wall Street publicly traded companies. And so you've got this, people who are in desperate situation, as you were, on one side of the table, and on the other side of the table, you have these sophisticated people from Wall Street, and it leads to market failure because over that amount, and I've talked to bankers about this, and Brian, thank you for putting these up on your website. Over $10,000, the free market works pretty well because bankers tell me people taking out loans, business people, they'll fight over 1/8 of 1%. But when you're desperate, you don't have that luxury and you'll agree to a loan at 175%. And these companies, this points out, they're everywhere.
Right.
We have one loan store like this for every about 3,800 New Mexicans. By contrast, you have a McDonald's for every 24,000. There are only 90 McDonald's compared to 561 of these loan stores. So we're working with a wonderful group, a coalition called New Mexicans for Fair Lending, who are helping us with this. Go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead. I think that's really phenomenal. I had to do a fact check on that because it just blew my mind when we talked about this contrast between the availability. But I wanted you to actually hit upon how this impacts at a disproportionate level our communities of color, our indigenous populations, our Hispanic population. Where do you see the vast majority of these? And you've made some progress, or at least Albuquerque, I think, has made some progress as it relates to some zoning issues. But can you speak to that a little bit, just to help us understand the gravity? I know we've only got 15 minutes left, but I do think this is super important.
So the Center on Law and Poverty, which is a wonderful organization in Albuquerque, actually mapped out where these stores are, and they were able to document that about 2/3 of them are located within 10 miles of either the Navajo reservation or any of our 22 pueblos in New Mexico. So they especially target the Native American community. And a shout out to Nota Begay, who's on our board at Think New Mexico. Nota's a terrific guy, in addition to being a pretty fine golfer.
Talk about philanthropist.
Yep, he's a great example of that and has created the Nota Begay 3 Foundation, which works on nutrition issues and Native American children. And he's going to be one of our star witnesses on this because it's outrageous how they locate these stores and really target low-income people, in many cases people that are unbanked or so anyway, that's where they locate many of these stores in our poor communities. And just one more reason why we need to pass this law and bring down the cap. And as I was saying, we have a lot of technical expertise, a lot of lawyers who work in this area, have come together and have helped us draft this legislation. So it would be 36% all inclusive. Many of these loans, the way the industry gets around them in other states that have 36% is they tack on fees and charges. We're not going to do that. The other thing that we've done is we've made it for any loan $10,000 or less, because again, in other states and in New Mexico, the way they get around charging 175%, they get around it and charge interest rates even higher than 175%, is they do loans that are above $5,000. So we've expanded the definition of small loans all the way up to $10,000. Thank you. There's our report on our 20th anniversary. So another part of this package is trying to do something about the fact that New Mexico's 47th out of the 50 states in financial literacy, according to Wallet Hub. And a trend across the country is that more and more states are making financial literacy a requirement for high school graduation. And it's astounding. In the last decade, 17 states have done this. So about a third of the country, including our neighbors in Texas, Arizona, and Utah. And you never want to let those states get ahead of us. So we're working on getting legislation that would make that a requirement. And we've got some wonderful legislators. Shout out to Mo Maestas and Saya. Oh, there you go. Oh, that looks very good on you. You really look handsome in that, Brian. Don't ever take that hat off.
All right.
Get my hat on.
Saya is going to do a great job. I don't have the relationship with her that I would like to have. I'm inspired every time I hear her speak and have her tell her story. If I remember correctly, she's an educator and just a phenomenal leader and going to do great things in New Mexico. I had to go get my Think New Mexico hat. I saw that 20th anniversary cover to your annual report, and I thought, and I saw all the hats on there. I was like, wait, I bought a hat from the store once, and I have it. Lely made me thin out the herd, as we say here at Casa Colon. We had to thin out the herd because I get all these caps, these ball caps, and I'm not a big, as you know, those of you that are regulars, you know I'm not a big hat guy. As it is, I feel like I'm losing all my hair too quickly, so I try not to wear ball caps. But I thinned the herd, and this made the top 10 list. So this is one of only 10 caps that stayed at Casa Colon. Check that out. See, look at that. Think New Mexico, baby.
Wear that on the campaign trail. It won't hurt you.
I know it won't. I mean, you are the public policy working horse for 22 years of impact and making a difference in the land of enchantment. Truly, truly amazing. I think we got a good sense of the predatory lending. Let's talk about real quickly. We got about 11 minutes to go. Financial literacy as a high school graduation requirement. Before we go to that, who's the number one legislator advocating for the predatory lending bill? I think it's Bill 66. Who's carrying it?
Yeah, you can remember it like Route 66. It's Bill Sewells from Las Cruces, a terrific educator and chairman of the Senate Education Committee, and he's being helped by Benny Shendo from the Jemez Pueblo, who's a co-sponsor. And then we've got Susan Herrera from the Espanola region. Yep. Yep. And so it's really an all-star cast of legislators. We're trying to get some Republicans to keep it bipartisan, and I wish I had some to tout to you, but coming attractions, we'll get them. So it's a good team, Brian.
Awesome. Well, let's make our incredible Cafecito colleagues, my Cafecito crew, my extrovert therapists who tuned in today, folks like Rich Brody. You know, Rich is a professor at the university, great thinker. He loves you, says you're doing great work. Willie Marquez coming in from Santa Fe, Condado de Santa Fe. We got Johnny Montoya, another New Mexico superstar, former chief of staff to the big time players of New Mexico. He's a great New Mexican. He sent you a little shout out there, Fred. And let me just say, we've got a couple other issues we want to get to today. Thank you, Esteban, for all your Ismael Camacho. Gracias por venir. Nancy Cooper, thank you. Jonathan and Kristen and Catherine and Elizabeth and all you wonderful New Mexicans who are my extrovert therapists like Nina Chavez. Thanks for coming to learn about Fred Nathan and his incredible work. Fred, tell us about financial literacy, capital outlay transparency, and maximizing dollars in the classroom. Take it away.
So financial literacy is something that we want to get past this year. And maybe I should go on to capital outlay transparency. You were saying how a lot of people don't understand how it works. That's sort of by design. I hate to say this, but this was a process that was started about 4 decades ago. It used to be when you were passing a bill to pay for infrastructure, you just mentioned the dam, where it was going to be, and then you had a funding source, and the legislature voted it up or down. About 40 years ago, Aubrey Dunn Sr. was the chairman of Senate Finance, and there was about 20 bills all over the legislature. He pulled them all in and put them into one massive bill for $125 million. He renamed it the Christmas tree bill. In other words, if you pass this bill, there'll be a present for every legislator in their district. And this is kind of the system that we've been using ever since. Most states have a very transparent, merit-based system where they prioritize the most urgently needed projects for health and safety. And it's usually delegated to experts, architects, engineers, planners, builders, and it's taken out of the political process. In New Mexico, we've been highlighted by Governing Magazine as having the most political process, because now what we do is we take a big pot of money and we split it up, and every legislator is told you have a certain amount of money. If you're a House member, it might be $2 million. If you're a senator, it might be $3 million that you can spend in your sole discretion. And in many cases, it's not always infrastructure. There have been doggy drinking fountains. One was passed down in Las Cruces for about $200,000. This in a state, as you know, Brian, where many people don't have access to clean drinking water, and we're paying for doggy drinking fountains in parks. Zoo animals has been one. So it doesn't always get spent as it should. In many cases, the money doesn't get spent because sometimes legislators will pick long-term projects, and Senator John Arthur Smith called it the layaway plan. So they'll put, like there's a courthouse in Mora that still hasn't been built because they ran out of money. So it's—
Get me started.
Yes. So, and I know you've been a leader on this issue, Brian, as state auditor, and you've documented a lot of this. So that's a big issue. We've got Matt McQueen up in Santa Fe, who's carrying that bill. We nearly passed it 2 years ago. This year, I think it's going to have smooth sailing. A lot of new legislators on both sides of the aisle are supporting it. And then I wanted to talk about the tax on delivered groceries. And as you might recall, back in 2005, with the help of Bill Richardson leading the charge, we repealed the tax on groceries, which had been implemented during the Great Depression. Came in as a temporary emergency tax to fund our schools. But that emergency and that temporary, even though the emergency, the Great Depression ended about 10 years later, the temporary tax remained in effect all the way till 2005. And so we were able to repeal that. And then amazingly, during the pandemic, we started getting calls from people saying, are you aware that they're taxing groceries again? And we said, no, that can't be, because the law's on the books. Nobody would be charging you tax on groceries. But what was going on is that some grocery stores, usually national out-of-store chains, had taken the position that when they delivered groceries, that the law didn't apply. Now they weren't charging for the delivery, or they're within their rights to charge for the delivery, but not to tax the groceries. But they were saying the law says groceries purchased at a grocery store, and they're saying, well, if they're delivered, they're not at the grocery store. And we were saying, no. If someone is elderly or disabled or immunocompromised and they're ordering their groceries with a credit card, that credit card is being taken at the grocery store. So it was a big fight with the tax department, and with the help of many people, including Nota Begay especially, who alerted 55,000 people to this issue on his social media. The tax department gave us a letter ruling saying you're correct. Taking the credit card at the store counts as a purchase at the store. We don't want to drag people into these stores who are immunocompromised in an international pandemic or disabled or elderly. But just so there's no confusion about the law, Javier Martinez is helping us. He has a big tax cleanup bill, House Bill 98. And by the way, Matthew McQueen's capital outlay bill is House Bill 55. And if your viewers want to contact their legislators and support these very important, good pieces of legislation, all they need to do is go to the Think New Mexico website, www.thinknewmexico, written out as one word, .org. Click on our Action Center, and they don't even have to spend money on a stamp. They can send the pre-scripted letter from our website directly to the governor, lieutenant governor, their state senator, and their state rep.
Walk us through that again. I know that I posted the link here in the chat, but let's walk them through that again. Here, take action, right?
Yes, exactly right, Brian. Thank you. Take action, and then they can pick whichever of these issues appeals to them, ideally all of them. Not to be greedy. So predatory lending, they might want to send a bill on that. They might want to send a letter on that. They might want to send a letter on making financial literacy a high school graduation requirement. Might want to send a letter on capital outlay transparency, because those are your tax dollars and you have a right to know how that money is being spent. And just to finish that bill doesn't include which sponsors are promoting which projects. And we just kind of feel at Think New Mexico that the best legislation is made when we do it in the light of day and it's transparent and everybody can weigh in on these projects and whether they're a good use of tax dollars or not. And by the way, Brian, you have been just such a wonderful leader on protecting New Mexico taxpayers and making sure that our tax dollars are being put to good use. So I'm not surprised that I know you've been a leader on this issue and that this is important to you as well as it is to us. And then food tax, that should never happen. We should not be taxing food, especially after we passed this law, 15 years ago. And then one final taxpayer issue is maximizing dollars to the classroom. And here we talk about, we did a study looking at 10 years of spending. I think we did this in 2018, and we compared spending on administrative spending, so district administrators, versus dollars spent in the classroom. And we were sort of horrified to see that in 61 of our 89 districts that we've been growing spending faster on administrators than in the classroom, where the actual learning takes place with our teachers and our students. So this is a bill that Jacob Candelaria has been helping us with, got it into House Bill 2, and it's really made a difference. Last year, it redirected $9 million out of administrative spending down to the classroom. And again, Jacob is pushing that in House Bill 2. And I see we may be out of time, but thank you for giving me this big microphone. And I'm impressed by who you've got watching. This is absolutely a secret weapon that makes me want to come back. Anytime you have a guest cancel, Brian, think of me.
Hey, I think of you often, and I'd love to have you back, and we're going to have you back. I hope you'll be able to get somebody in the office to kind of walk you through some of the important comments on here from the Gaba family, from Karen Lewine, who actually says, Fred Nathan is a good egg. And I couldn't agree more. Karen Lewine, thank you very much for that. Nancy Cooper, thank you for joining us. Another one of our former honorables here in the beautiful land of enchantment, the Tierra del Encanto, the 47 star on the beautiful flag of the United States of America. And it's going to shine a little brighter if we can embrace some of these great public policies that are being advanced by Think New Mexico. Again, this is a bipartisan multi-partisan, nonpartisan, however you want to think about it, folks. Think New Mexico is about doing what I talk about every day, lifting up New Mexico. Hashtag lift up NM. We've got to do what we can to increase the quality of lives for our children and generations to come. And far too often, we don't realize that that starts with our economic landscape and the public policies that we embrace in the roundhouse and on the fourth floor of that roundhouse with the governor's pen. It has to do with economic policies that have intergenerationally held back families from advancing. And far too often, those holdbacks have been people of color and our indigenous population. So when you think about this work, understand that it has an over representation of impact in a positive way on our communities who've been marginalized for far too long. And I want to say that for 22 years, Fred Nathan's little idea that he took to the incredible living legend at the time, Stuart Udall, before we celebrated his life at the Paulo Soleri Theater in Santa Fe. I'll never forget that beautiful day when we celebrated his life. 22 years ago, when Fred had this idea that he could bring together people who were not just Democrats, not just Republicans, but were New Mexicans who wanted to have stronger public policies to lift up our 2.1 million beautiful people here in the land of enchantment. You've made a huge difference in our state, whether it's with repealing the food tax or all the great public policy. Look, you were talking about all-day kindergarten long before early childhood development became a cool thing to say coast to coast. Now we know that educators around the universe are saying, look, the best investment you can make in education is early childhood development, all-day kindergarten, preschool, prenatal, making sure that it's from tomb all the way back to the womb that we're taking care of our young people as it comes to educating and inspiring them to live full lives of impact. So Fred Nathan, I'm grateful for you. Thanks for your work with Think New Mexico. I wear this hat very, very proudly. I encourage you, I did put the link in there to the store. So get on there and buy something to support the good work, or just make a flat out contribution. If you don't need any more, we don't have to be a consumer society. I know most of you think you got more than you need already. So take a couple bucks and drop it in the till there. Thank you, Elba. Thank you, Mary Ellen Gallegos. Thank you, Aricelia. Appreciate you being with us. Dr. Lawrence Roybal giving a lot of props and high praise to Dr. Fred Nathan here this morning. We appreciate you joining us on Cafecito con Colon. Come and join us again next week. We're going to have another wonderful week of programming. On Monday, we will have Ann Edenfeld-Sweet, who's making a huge impact when it comes to taking our folks in New Mexico from incarceration to impact in the community and helping support those families on that journey. Tuesday, January 26th is my birthday. I have no idea what's on the agenda other than my sister will be joining us as my guest on Cafecito con Colon. She's not one to be big on camera, but she's going to join us on my birthday, which is Tuesday. And then we've got the rest of the week all planned out. We've got Michael Barrio, who's going to talk about Santa Fe housing security. We've got Thursday, another great episode, and then it's just going to be a fantastic week on Cafecito con Colon. And this Sábado Gigante was fantastic with Think New Mexico. Fred Nathan, it's 10:04. Take the last minute to 10:05 and tell us, anything I didn't give you a chance to say because I was super talkative, because I'm super nervous, because I've got a living legend, Fred Nathan, on Cafecito con Colon.
No, I just want to thank you so much for Brian, for you are such a terrific public servant and always promoting what's best for New Mexico. And I'm humbled to be a part of this show. I've been hearing great things about it. And Otiamba wanted me, so one of our staffers who is just a terrific advocate for New Mexico is Otiamba Umi, who is our field director. And his mentor in life is none other than Brian S. Colon, Esquire. And Otiamba, I believe, worked at your law firm for several years, then later became a district attorney, assistant district attorney. And then we were lucky enough to hire him away. And he's been with us, I think, 6 or 7 years. And he's the one who really works behind the scene and doesn't get enough credit passing these bills. He's working overtime right now. And another shout out to Christina Fisher, who's our associate director at Think New Mexico. Christina, you'll enjoy this, Brian. And you should have both of them on at some point. Christina graduated #1 in her class at UNM Law School with the highest GPA in the history of the state. And I always joke, like, I don't know what I'm doing working for a public policy think tank, but Christina really should be.
Let me just say this. I made the top half of the class at UNM School of Law possible.
Yeah, you and me both. I was at Northwestern in Chicago, but I always say I learned everything during my bar review class because, you know, at Northwestern, they don't really teach you this stuff. It's just a lot of abstract discussions. And, but the fine professors at UNM Law School taught me how to practice law. So here we are.
Let me just say that here we are is a better place than where we would be if it hadn't been for your decades of service to New Mexico. Thank you, Fred Nathan. If I don't get to thank you enough, let me do that today. In front of all my Cafecito colleagues, you have made me a better human being. You've made me a better thinker. We agree on most issues, not all issues, but what I do know is that anytime I come to you, I know that I can get the straight story from you. It's kind of like those great government relations specialists that work in the roundhouse to educate our 112 public servants. The good ones, you know, they're always going to give you both sides of the story. They're going to give you the truth. Then they're going to help you make the best decision, hoping that you come down on their side of the issue, but knowing that they've provided solid data and solid guidance when it comes to making that right choice. And Fred Nathan, I'm a better public servant. I'm a better elected official because I have you on my speed dial.
Brian, I want you to send me a picture with you in that hat and I will put it in the next annual report. And you're making me blush with all the nice things you're saying, but thank you again for having me on.
You bet. We'll send you that photograph. I'm honored to wear it. And I'm honored to have my Cafecito colleagues come on every day on Cafecito con Colon to be my extrovert therapist. You've gotten me through this pandemic. We are 1 year and a couple days out from the very first case of COVID-19 in America. We've lost 400,000 plus Americans and we grieve as a nation. I'm grateful to our leadership in New Mexico, who is like number 4 when it comes to the percentage of vaccines that have been translated to vaccinations in New Mexico. We haven't gotten it exactly right. We know that, as I said yesterday, my heart breaks for those educators who were scheduled to get their vaccines in Rio Rancho, Bernalillo, and APS. But because Department of Health, we had a communication issue. We didn't get it right. We got to do better. We will do better. But we're going to get those vaccines to become vaccinations, and then we're going to get our educators back in the classroom in those hybrid models. We got to get our students back amongst each other. Let's continue to lift up New Mexico. Thanks for 753 days of awesome as your state auditor of New Mexico. I'm honored and privileged to serve. Call somebody in isolation and tell them they're not alone. We're in this together. That Fred Nathan is lifting up New Mexico. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye, Dr. Fred Nathan. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Loved it. It was fun.
Come back again.
I will.
Bye-bye. And just to make sure I got that exactly right, I think it might have said Nathan's son. I don't know where I got that from. Oh, I know why. This is funny. Fred will like this. So I was thinking it's Fred Nathan, but Paul Nathanson was another great professor at the law school who did great public policy work. So shout out to Paul Nathanson. Good to think of you today, buddy. Have a great day, everybody. Love you, New Mexico. Bye-bye.